Just like the absolute best. We talked about one of one with Travis Hunter, Sigmund Bloom, one of one.
One of one. Where else are you getting that kind of answer to that question, folks? And that's what makes him the GOAT.
It's the IDP show, now you know.
Welcome to the IDP show. I'm your host, Josh Raymer, in the Sode Shack this afternoon. Adam Markham, Bobby Reynolds, and joining us for, I think, the fourth year now. It's one of our favorite episodes, one of our favorite guests. We are about a week out from the NFL draft, but we are on the eve of something even more monumental. It is the publication of the pre-draft Bloom 100. Our guest today from footballguys.com, Sigmund Bloom. Sig, welcome back to the Sode Shack, my friend. How are you?
Oh, it's good to be back. And I love the shack and the couch. There's an affinity there. I know Matt Waldman talks about the stuff that you can find in the couch, or he leaves it in the couch. Like the next time he comes back, like that bubble gum is still there. And I know before we came on, you've got the air mattresses, and if we're in a jam, the shed is always there for us. It's a place of comfort. It's a place of relief, and a place I always look forward to coming back to.
Yes, and one day, Lord willing and the creek don't rise, Sig, we are going to do On the Couch from the Sode Shack.
Yes.
And that synergy will be beautiful, and it will be complete, gentlemen.
Yeah, we'll get a couch in here.
Yes, we can absolutely get a couch right here. We'll move the table out. We'll get Sig in the middle. We'll get multi-camera. I've already got it all mapped out, Sig. It's going to be
Mexican beforehand.
If you will, it is
Yes.
a dream. Yes.
Yes, we'll do some golf, or maybe disc golf. Sure. We'll do some Mexican. We'll have just a beautiful day, Sig. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah. So, but we always look forward to having you on. We're doing an NFL draft preview, some of your favorite IDPs from this class, Sig. And what I love about the Bloom 100, just to kind of kick things off here, is that you look at this class and every class from a top-down holistic perspective, position group by position group. So before we dive into like the individual players, what's kind of your rundown of these different position groups on defense for the 2025 class?
Yeah, and look, guys, I know you're the IDP show, and I love you. I love you all, and I love IDP fantasy football. And I'm sorry if leading with this is going to cause like the YouTube viewer numbers to just drop off a cliff. But overall, even one step above the individual position groups, this is probably not a season, not a year, not a draft that you want to be taking IDPs in your rookie draft. Sorry. Overall, it is a very strong offensive class in terms of depth, in terms of the number of guys that can contribute in the NFL. And it's for the IDPs, there's a lot of warts. And the other thing about IDP fantasy football right now is I think we're still reckoning with the true position. What's up, Gary Davenport? Love you. The true position split, and how the edge group is so much deeper now. The linebacker group is not as deep, and it isn't necessarily like this is a linebacker group that's going to make it deeper. So stepping through, defensive tackle, for the and the truly hardcore play in leagues with two defensive tackles. I'm in a couple of leagues like that. There's a couple of guys. Mason Graham is probably not as ideal for fantasy, but is going to go in the top 5. Which again, and there's another story here that there's just not that many blue chip types in this draft. So like the players going off the board after number 5 or so aren't going to be the caliber of what you're used to. And then Walter Nolan, who's more of a gap shooter, fantasy friendly profile. Some questions, some bust risk there. And I don't know, Shamar Stewart could be, now if he's announced as a defensive tackle, now we're talking. That could be really interesting. It's a good edge class led by a guy that Abdul Carter could be the number 1 edge. And he's good enough that it might not even matter how deep the class of edges are. And then there's a lot of guys that are going to go in the first round and second round. A lot of different profiles, some guys that maybe aren't sack artists, but are more active in the run game, or more like glass eaters who are going to have effect on the game, and then more sack specialists. As always, scoring system is going to matter here. Linebackers rough. The two best linebacker prospect are tweeners, and not necessarily, we look back, maybe we remember Thomas Davis as a linebacker safety tweener that hit, but for the most part, when the NFL is like, well, he can do this, like look at Nolan Smith, like he can do this and he can do this. It just doesn't work out for fantasy. And I'm worried about that with Jahad Campbell and Jalen Walker. Again, they're going to go high in the draft, but they're not the caliber of defender that we're used to, say, going in the top 15 of the draft. It's automatic translation. I'm not as sure about that. There's Carson Schwarzenegger, who's probably the best off-ball linebacker in terms of fantasy translation. And then there's a whole bunch of guys that, good in coverage, but maybe not an early down guy. The early down thumper, but maybe not a coverage guy. And teams are segmenting their linebacker roles. I think there's a ton of guys like that in this year's draft. There's one awesome safety, Emmanwori. There's a few cornerbacks that might look at in the rookie corner rule, but overall, it's a lackluster IDP class in a very deep offensive class.
Yeah, so there you go, folks. That's going to do it for this episode of the IDP show.
Yeah, right.
No, it's true, Bobo. I have some 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks in our rookie draft, and I'm sitting there. We've done some mock drafts. We'll do one post draft, and it's one of those things. I think we had like 7 guys go in our recent 3-round rookie mock draft. There's obviously like 2 shining stars in Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter for the IDP side. Then you get into like Emmanwori, Jihad Campbell, Carson Schlesinger, whatever defensive tackle flavor floats your boat, and maybe 1 or 2 other edges. But this is going to be a year where I'm going to have a hard time pushing the button on some of these IDPs in the rookie draft, maybe sending some of these guys out for like veterans that I can trade for while I'm on the clock.
Well, exactly like Sig's saying, we saw a guy this week, one of my favorite players, Isaiah Simmons, no better definition of a tweener in the NFL than this guy, can do it all, but can't do anything great. And that kind of worries me. The longer we play IDP, and the less these guys look like a Luke Kuechly, just sit down and rack up a bunch of tackles. It's really good when your linebackers are a certain way and your safeties look a certain way when there's this like in-between edge linebacker, what's their true position. Sometimes that doesn't always translate to talent in the NFL from an IDP perspective. Sometimes when you're searching after these guys, they might look fun on a team because you've got this Isaiah Simmons can run a 4.3, but nobody really knows how to use him.
I think about Tyree Wilson too, right?
Yeah.
Athletic freak, pterodactyl arms, like just a Hulk out there, but still trying to figure out his position. So
Zaven Collins.
Right.
Yeah, a lot more examples of the bust types instead of like the Micah Parsons. Sometimes it does work out.
It does.
But yeah, same feeling. I'm quite scared to spend a high pick on any IDPs in this draft.
Yeah.
So I don't think I'll do it.
Yeah, agreed. Well, let's jump into some player takes here, Sig, and we can kind of talk more about these guys as we go and kind of how we see them slotting into drafts. But the belle of the ball, at least for IDP leagues, and this has been a fun year because of this player, is Travis Hunter. And there's a lot to unpack in this conversation. How he's going to be designated on your platform of choice, what team he lands with, how they are going to use the player, if your platform scores offensive and defensive points. A lot to unpack there, Sig. We have talked a ton on our show about Travis Hunter. We are very bullish on him. I know that you're bullish on him as well. I believe you said on Twitter recently, should be in consideration for the 101 in rookie drafts and CB required leagues.
Oh, yeah.
Now, we're close to the draft. We're about 8 days out. Where are you coming down on Travis Hunter now, Sig?
Yeah, you just don't overthink it, okay? Just don't overthink it. Like, why is this exciting? Why are we enjoying this time of the year? Why do I even bother putting the time in for the Bloom 100? Why did I start writing it 20 years ago? Because it's fun to play GM. Because it's fun to think about your organization and your philosophy and how you build a winner, right? How exciting is it to add someone like Travis Hunter to your team when you, unlike, all these debates, like if you play him at a cornerback, you're going to get to harvest all of his value. It doesn't matter if you play 25 snaps or 10 snaps or 40 snaps on offense. You're going to have someone who gives you an unfair advantage at a position. And you're also going to be adding somebody, the phrase I like to use is just unknown upside, absolute unknown upside. And I think even in offense-only fantasy leagues, he's my number 2 player and one quarterback, not super flex, because we've never seen anybody like this before. And remember, he was playing like 80% of the snaps on both sides of the ball if Colorado. So we don't even know like if a team is a little more nuanced about how they use him and keeps his gas tank full. But he would be the number 1 wide receiver in this draft. He'd be the number 1 cornerback in this draft. There's still, he's a unicorn and there's still untapped potential. How do you even comprehend that? I want that on my fantasy team. It's simple. Like, don't overthink this. As far as more specific nuts and bolts, it looks like he's going to go to Cleveland, which applauds to Cleveland for making the right pick there. And they could use someone to spark their offense. I was talking to Dane Brugler yesterday, who lives in Northeast Ohio. And he's like, hey, for Cleveland, like, man, I think he said they were the lowest scoring team in the league. So they need a spark for their offense. So that's good for fantasy. And I just think that he's the kind of player that a team might say, we only have this plan to use him in a limited fashion on wide receiver snaps. But look at the top pay for wide receivers and look at the top pay for cornerbacks. I mean, the NFL values wide receiver contributions more than cornerback contributions. So if he's outstanding in both areas, chances are he's going to create more opportunity for himself at wide receiver. That's the more valuable place for him to add. And for fantasy, even on the IDP side, that's what we want, right? We want like 80% of his production to come from wide receiver and then adding in some cornerback pass breakups, pick sixes, sometimes to like sway a week in our favor. But you play fantasy football, so you can add a player like Travis Hunter to your team and then share in the greatness.
Yeah, don't be afraid to have fun, Addy. And I want to read this quote here that came out, I think, yesterday from a podcast that Travis Hunter did. Basically said, I won't play football at all if an NFL team tries to limit me to just one side of the ball. No team has expressed any issues with me playing both cornerback and wide receiver in the NFL. Comp I saw today for the wide receiver like ceiling outcome from our buddy Nate Tice, Chad Ochocinco.
Wow.
We've also seen Justin Jefferson thrown around, right? And to think this guy is already this type of prospect, having to have the routes communicated to him from the sidelines on game day because he was not in the practices for wide receivers. Like, unknown upside is right. And I'll take that swing because I want to potentially capture that upside. And like Sig said, let's just have fun. It's fantasy football. Let's have fun. Don't be afraid of fun.
Yeah, this is like the coolest thing ever, guys. Like,
yes,
this is the best. Like, what are we doing here? But yeah, I love that Hunter's already applying the pressure to whoever drafts him. Like, hey, use me right. You know?
I want to set myself up to get this big, massive, unseen contract.
That's the key, right? That's the key. I don't think a lot of people are taking that into account. But like, if he plays both sides of the ball, he's going to be the most highest paid non-Q. And he might get quarterback. He might get quarterback.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yes, like, he knows this. His agent definitely knows this. His previous head coach was Deion Sanders. I'm sure he talked to him about it a little bit.
Right.
So, like, yeah, he's got a chance to make crazy, crazy money. And this is also just like a legacy thing for him. Like, he's got a chance to be like a one of one in the NFL.
Right,
So,
be one of the all-time greats. You think about like multi-sport athletes, right? Like Deion,
right.
Like Bo Jackson. But we don't really have that sort of model that we look to say, like, this is how you play both sides of the ball in a violent, physical, demanding sport like football. And Travis Hunter has a chance to do that. Bobo, you're sitting at 102. Have you changed your mind at all on taking Travis Hunter there?
Oh, absolutely not. No, I think this draft more than any, you have two 101s in my opinion. And I know, maybe that's just because I have the 102. I'm trying to, convince myself, hey, GT, he's good, but Hunter's just
as good. Look at Hunter.
But
wow.
I do feel like this is a really fun year to where it's like you could make a compelling argument that both of these guys are going to be really good at football for a really long time. If you could sit here and basically say you can have Justin Jefferson, who also plays some defense,
who's also Sauce Gardner.
What are we
on
doing?
The other side of the ball?
What are we doing?
Yeah, don't be scared, folks. And Sig, I would say too, like, don't get wrapped around the axle with some of these questions. You mentioned, like, don't overthink it. I think that's what a lot of folks who are fading Hunter are doing right now. They're worrying about landing spot, how the team is going to use him, the position, the positional designation, great player. Just draft great players, right?
Yeah. Yes. And I think that Shohei Ohtani has been brought up a lot in a comparison. Y'all are mentioning like potential to blow up the pay scale. One of the things I want to point out while we're on that topic and that comparison is if you watch baseball and before he blew out his elbow and he was pitching and he was playing at a top level. And one of the things that was really amazing about Ohtani is like he was a better hitter on days he was pitching. It was wild. He almost hit for the cycle one game when he was pitching a gem. But oftentimes in the booth, there would be a color man who was a former pitcher. former starting pitcher. And when they would talk about Ohtani, you could tell that they didn't understand. They really didn't understand. They said that my body was wrecked like 2 or 3 days after I would start. And I was only able to recover enough to start like, 4 or 5 days after I started. And they just didn't understand. Like they truly, after going through it, could not comprehend. And I think that's where we're already at with Travis Hunter, where there's a reason. I mean, there's a lot of players I'm sure that would have loved to have done what he did, but there's a reason that nobody has been able to do it on both sides of the ball at the level he's done it. So it's just so much fun and so exciting. But I will say, to expand the conversation, I'm in a league that has like really high bonuses for sacks and pressures and quarterback hits and things like that. And I'm not sure about like certain big play scoring systems, but I do think the number 3 pick, depending on your scoring system, or the first round pick, I do want to say that Abdul Carter is worth a first round pick. And I do think that Abdul Carter, if we're fawning about Hunter as we should, but Abdul Carter is special. I mean, he's a special player. And he has a combination of traits, the ability, the speed, the bend, the speed to power, all the things we're looking for in a dominant edge rusher. But he also plays with his hair on fire. I mean, he also plays the game like with so much passion and intensity. And that's going to translate. He's a worthy number 1 overall pick too. And he's a player that I will make an exception for when I say, well, edge is so deep, because he is a player that could absolutely set a standard like TJ Watt. He could set a standard in our dynasty IDP leagues where he becomes, at least where you get, say, 5-6 point a sack, or you start to get like sack yards and all kinds of things adding that. He can give us those 30, 40 weak swinging performances. So I think even if you're sitting at number 3 in an IDP league with the right scoring, or to go back to the Hunter talk, even in the offensive only rookie drafts, I'm seeing Hunter falling to like 6. What are we doing here? Huh? I mean, maybe number 3, maybe. I mean, I guess people really love running backs. And similarly, Abdul Carter is a player that if I can get him with a late first round pick, because the thing is, the talent at offense is going to be a vast plateau. So you're not going to get, like in the second, third round of rookie drafts, you're not going to be giving up that much on offense. There's only one Abdul Carter in this draft. And he's another player like Hunter where, we may not have seen his best football yet. I mean, he was an off-ball linebacker. He was just learning how to rush the passer. So he's almost the ideal version of a tweener, where unlike Walker and Campbell, it's like, well, where do we put him? No. We know we're going to put him. He's an edge, and he's going to be a man. He's going to be really good, but he understands the game like an off-ball linebacker also. So let's get excited about him too.
Yeah, this is sort of the draft for these sort of players that are either transitioning from one position to another. There are these tweener types. There's Travis Hunter. But I agree with Sig. There are 2 crown jewels here on the defensive side with Travis Hunter, with Abdul Carter, both worthy of first-round picks in rookie drafts. But let's talk everyone's favorite position, Sig. Linebackers. This is a class, as you mentioned, headlined by Jahad Campbell, Carson Schlesinger, and then we'll get into the Jalen Walker conversation because I'm curious where you come down on him. You mentioned Dane Brugler. I know he looks at Walker more as an edge rather than as an off-ball linebacker, but we've heard first-round buzz for all 3 of these guys, Walker, Campbell, and even Schlesinger getting some first-round buzz in that like surprise first-round pick category. So is there someone outside of those top 3 that maybe landing spot dependent you really like their upside for IDP?
Yeah, and again, linebacker is rough this year. Okay. Linebacker is rough this year because, like I said, you've got thumpers, somebody like Danny Stutzman. But is he going to stay on the field on passing downs, right? And you have guys like Smail Mondin or who, like, is he going to stay on the field for rundowns? You have, someone like Barrett Carter, who's like, he's an athlete, but how's that going to fit? Averaging all those things, the guy that I like at cost is Chris Paul Jr. And why I like him is because he's a clear leader, green dot linebacker kind of player. a quarterback of the defense. And while he's not outstanding as an athlete against the pass, right? But he's good enough. And he's not a thumper. He's good enough. He's the kind of player that has always gotten more out of himself than he should. And I think that has a better chance of translating to what we care about in IDP leagues than these guys who, he's going to stand out as a coverage linebacker, but maybe is going to get washed out in the run, or stand out against the run, but will be a liability against the pass. Those linebackers, I think, are going to be tougher as someone to really hit than Chris Paul, who's not going to stand out athletically, but is going to stand out with his smarts and his instincts.
Yeah, this is, I was looking at the Beast here, Dane Brugler's draft guide, which if you all haven't checked that out, make sure you check it out over at The Athletic. Fantastic resource. He has Chris Paul Jr. as his 7th ranked linebacker with a round 3-4 grade. Addy, any linebackers? Like Sig said, it's kind of rough. This feels like the year just to trade for the veterans, those late round rookie picks. But anybody else caught your eye outside of Walker, Campbell, and Swessinger?
He mentioned Stutzman. I like Stutzman pretty well. 14.1% tackle rate for his college career. So that's one of the better rates in the class. Also, have you you should do a Google image search of Mr. Stutzman. Some very good photos.
Some very good photos?
Team photos. Yeah, he's some really unique hairstyles.
Okay.
So,
I'm into this now. I'm into it. Sig just sat up in his chair a little bit when he heard
it's good stuff.
Unique
it's good
hairstyles.
Stuff. You'd like it. But yeah, he's interesting. Teddy Buchanan's interesting. I like him a decent amount. I've been rising on him lately. But yeah, for the most part, this isn't going to be a class outside of that first round. Those, Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter, feel great about those guys. No issue with spinning up for those guys. But for the most part, I'm not going to be pounding the table for any of these guys. I think there's going to be a lot of talent on waivers after your drafts.
Right. Bobo, this feels like one of those situations where we may get more engrossed with some of these linebackers, landing spot dependent, right? I mean, we'll see some of these guys, probably 5, 6, 7 of them go in the top 100, I would say. And some of them might land in good situations. I mean, there are some soft linebacker rooms across the league right now. So I think we're going to rise on some guys, but that's kind of what it feels like right now. It's just let's wait and see. And then I think let's fade those guys to the back of drafts.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, because I'm sitting here kind of like Sig thinking about running backs. We've talked about Travis Hunter. We've talked about where to take Abdul Carter. What happens next week when running backs just get pushed down the board pretty far because all these teams are like, there's a bunch of them. We're just going to wait. We don't want to be the one that jumps up here and grabs Omarion Hampton or Travion Henderson in the first or second, however you value those guys. We're going to grab,
the more premium
Jarquez
positions.
Hunter.
Yeah.
We're going to grab RJ Harvey later on. We're going to jump up here and try to get, wide receivers are okay. There's a half dozen pretty good ones, and then a bunch of, guys.
I think you'll see a
that.
lot of edge rushers go first round.
So it's kind of going to be very similar to see what these teams do with linebacker. My Rammies need a linebacker.
That's right.
And they haven't paid anybody, So what happens when all of a sudden a Carson Swessinger gets drafted to the Rams in the 3rd round? Obviously that's going to be somebody in our IDP drafts that we're probably paying attention to at that point. But I do feel like I agree with the way Sig started the entire episode. Take everything as far as IDP this year with a grain of salt because the talent is just not really there yet this year. There's going to be a couple landing spots that we'll have to pay attention to, but that's all going to be post-draft information.
Yeah. So we talked about edge rushers. I think this is going to be another year where we're probably going to see 7, 8 edge rushers go in the first round of the NFL draft. And so we mentioned Abdul Carter. We've talked about him a lot. He is definitely the highlight of this group. But what do you think of this edge group? I know you mentioned it's not the most polished, right? It doesn't have maybe the caliber of talent that some other classes have had. But who is a guy outside of Abdul Carter that you'll be targeting in rookie drafts, if anyone?
Yeah, well, I think it goes more to if anyone. We're going to see a lot. You said a lot of draft capital. And because of that, you're probably going to see some overinvestment, thinking some people in rookie drafts will say, "Oh, I'll take a first round player no matter what." Over why would I take a fourth round running back over a first round edge? And there's going to be a lot of first round edges. I suppose the one exception I'll make is Michael Williams. And it's if you have a league that is still set up with true defensive ends, not edge, defensive ends, because he's got the classic NFL defensive 4-3 defensive end game and frame, and he was playing hurt. So if you're looking at a guy who we may watch Michael Williams, he's going to go in the top 12 or so probably, and we may watch him and say like, oh man, so he was playing hurt. Like this is how good he is. Like we could revise and say maybe he was closer to the top two. I mean, of him and Campbell and Walker, who are all going to go off the board probably in the top 16, 18. Although Campbell, I think there might be some medical questions. So if he falls, maybe you add that into your understanding. He's the one I think that I'm not worried about how he's going to translate. And I think there's upside that we're not necessarily factoring in. But again, if you can play 3-4 outside linebackers or a classic 4-3 end, then the advantage of a guy who really hits, I think, and then one of the names Dane threw out for Michael Williams, like Jason Pierre-Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. I liked having Jason Pierre-Paul on my dynasty teams, but that was before true position.
Yeah, so this is an interesting conversation. And I want to dig into maybe some edges that we like. A guy that I have heard a lot of buzz. It seems like the kind of it's always interesting to track kind of who's rising and who's falling in the lead up to the draft. And one guy that I know is getting a lot of buzz. Bobo, I know you're a fan. Mike Green out of Marshall. Was listening to the Athletic Football Show with Dane and Robert, and they talked about that Mike Green would have been the number one edge rusher for them had he come out last year in that class with Verse, Latu, and Turner. So that got my attention because we liked that edge class a lot. So Mike Green, I think, has been a riser. Anybody else, Bobo, that's kind of been catching your attention here in the lead up to the draft?
I mean, Mike Green would be the big one. I do wish James Pierce didn't have kind of the off the field weirdness because the talent and the athleticism is pretty undeniable. I mean, that guy has some of the freakiest highlights that you can find of any of the edges in this class, even including Abdul Carter, in my opinion. But, with a guy like that who's just borderline, the whole narrative behind him is just being uncoachable. It's going to be hard to draft a guy like that onto your IDP team just because, sure, he might have some great weeks, but then you're just going to have some of these Josh Allen weeks maybe where he just completely disappears. So, really just the top ones. I mean, Jalen Walker is really intriguing to me because it's potentially an edge that does more than just get sacks, actually put up some decent tackle numbers there in college. So that's kind of always what I look for when you're looking for a guy like Jalen Walker. Can he get you sacks? Yes. But if he doesn't get you a sack, is he going to leave you as a zero for the week? Probably no. Probably going to get a couple tackles also. So I don't know. Mike Green's intriguing as well. Addy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, there's some interesting ones. The Braden Swinson out of LSU. He's been getting a lot of hype lately, and from a pressure standpoint was really good. Didn't really give us like sacks, but I mean, again, pressures were there and all that stuff. David Walker's an interesting player out of Central Arkansas. Like his tape is insane. Like it's Central Arkansas. So
yeah, fourth round grade from Dane in the Beast, his 21st overall edge rusher.
But you can say the same for Mike Green.
Yeah, sure, right. But I think Walker had like a 60% pressure rate for his career there. The grades were like in above 85 every single year. But yeah, he'll be free, I imagine. Assuming he keeps that type of capital, third or fourth round. So, I mean, I'm fine to just, pick up those little guys.
Waivers.
Yeah.
Right. And just hope if you got a taxi squad, throw them on the taxi squad, throw them on the IR, see what happens. Sig, let's have the Jalen Walker conversation because you mentioned things down in the couch cushions.
Yeah.
It kind of feels like Jalen Walker at least around this table, not a guy we've discussed a lot on this show just because we don't know what position he's going to play. A lot of people I've listened to in the run-up to the draft have had, like, look, I'm looking at him as an off-ball linebacker, and that's how I'm scouting him. Dane has him as his number 2 overall edge. So you wonder if he's this tweener. Are we looking at a Frankie Louvu, Caden Ellis type player? Where did you ultimately come down on where you think Jalen Walker will fit in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, it's good to throw out Louvu and Ellis as upside type comparisons, but I will tell you this, as a classic edge rusher, I just don't see, like Micah Parsons is a name that came up already in the show. He's not a refined edge rusher. He doesn't have a deep bag of tricks. And as far as his size and his style of play as an edge rusher, I think that NFL offensive tackles at first are just going to devour him. And he's, and again, like as an off-ball linebacker, he doesn't look out of place. Okay, he's functional. If you were just evaluating him as an off-ball linebacker, would you put him above Schlesinger, or would you otherwise say, like, on that alone, this isn't like Travis Hunter, where on both sides of the ball you have incredible traits, incredible developed skills. You have somebody, and I think that one of the other stories of this draft is after the top 3 players, okay, and you include Ashton Jeanty as the 4th, because a lot of teams are probably going to say that Ashton Jeanty is in the overall galaxy of talent, like there with Carter and Hunter and Cam Ward, okay, Cam Ward getting a bump for quarterback value. But the drop off, and Dane confirmed this when I talked to him yesterday, the drop off to number 5 or number 4, if you're the Patriots, is just, it's so steep this year. So guys like Walker and Campbell are getting pushed up the board kind of on wishful thinking. And I just think we're going to look at them and think like, oh, wow, look at how high they went in the draft. But the reality is they're more like a late first round pick in terms of the quality if we're comparing it to other drafts. So again, Nolan Smith comes up. Hey, a lot of people had Nolan Smith going a lot higher in the draft than where the Eagles got him. Sound familiar? That's like the typical Eagles draft story, right? And it took Vic Fangio coming to the Eagles for them to figure out like, okay, how can we really start getting something out of this guy? Because that's the problem with Walker. He's not among the best edge rushers in this class. He's not among the best off-ball linebackers in this class, but there's so much there to work with that a team is going to take him high.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what they do with him.
Yeah, also like one of the youngest guys in the class, right. Great traits, and same thing with Williams. Like he's a specimen, and also like a really good run defender. So like the tackles will be there with him, but like upside. That's what I keep coming back to with Micah Williams and Jalen Walker too. They just have a lot of untapped potential and good traits that you want to see. Also, they were at Georgia, and it's been for whatever reason it's hard to get production there.
Right? Has there been a better store of value recently for IDP than Georgia defenders? Right? I mean, all of them, just about all of them, have hit and have returned value. Especially if you're able to get them in rookie drafts. So, but let's talk safety, Sig. This is a group definitely, like you said, headlined by the athletic freak show that is Nick Emmanwori. Adam is a big fan of Malachi Starks out of Georgia as well. So are you an Emmanwori guy? Are you a Starks guy? Is there someone outside of those two that you're showing love to or interested in for rookie drafts?
Yeah, just Emmanwori, and there's a big gap too. I mean, Emmanwori, depending on your scoring system, is pretty intriguing. I know from the Beast that he looks up to Derwin James. We can think about the impact that Derwin James has had, and Emmanwori has everything you want in a fantasy safety. He's got size, he's got incredible physical athleticism. He plays with a physical edge. He can blitz. He can jump routes. He can make plays at the catch point. He's a sure tackler. He can play a box safety role. And because he can do all these things close to the line of scrimmage, we're with Starks, fantasy skews these things. And, this is the extra layer we add, right? Because maybe for the NFL, they're debating these two guys, but they're very different safeties. And Starks is more in the mold of, say, like Javon Holland, where I think you're using him more farther away from the line of scrimmage, and the tactical value especially that he adds, maybe you can get away with playing single high with him back there, but that's not necessarily going to translate to production. So he's well behind Emmanwori in the Bloom 100.
I am proud to announce that Fast Draft now has an all-defense game called D-Up. That's right, fans of IDP finally have a real money best ball game that they can play. No more manually setting up leagues every time you want to do a draft. No. Now you can play for 10 grand, 2,000 to first. Could draft up to 30 teams, all defense. And the best part, balanced scoring, tackles for loss, pass breakups. It all factors in. Just draft 6 defensive players, top 4 into your lineup every week. It's that easy. It's so easy that this isn't just for IDP people. If you love the NFL, then you'll love this game. And for the first time with Fast Draft, you can sweat both sides of the ball on Sunday. So use your host promo code to get a $25 deposit match, and you'll love this D-Up contest because it's about time we got one.
It's funny you should mention Javon Holland as the player that Emmanwori is kind of reminiscent of, because in his 7-round mock draft today, Dane Brugler has Emmanwori going to the Miami Dolphins at 13. So that would be a fun fit. Adam, cover your ears because I know you're a Cole Bishop fan. He has Malachi Starks going to the Buffalo Bills at 30 overall. So pull the knife out of Cole Bishop's back if that happens. In the Beast, those two are right there back to back. Emmanwori is 17. Starks is 19 overall. Big gap to the next guy, Xavier Watts, at 54 overall. It feels like these are probably the only two guys we're taking in rookie drafts, Eddie. Maybe Watts.
Xavier Watts, the guy from Penn State. I'm blanking on his name.
I'll get it for you, baby. Don't worry.
Those are the 4 I would take.
Kevin Winston.
Yes. But yeah, for the most part, I think, Emmanwori, dude. I mean, like everything Sig said, like he's going to be so good for fantasy, especially like that on his rookie contract. Like that's where I've kind of differ between the two. I think Malachi Starks could linger around the NFL for a lot longer, be a 10, 15 year vet type. Whereas, Emmanwori, that type of player these days doesn't seem to last very long anymore. Like Jeremy Chin, now he's bouncing around team to team, not getting long-term deals. Things like Jamal Adams, like they kind of like fizzle out at a certain point. So that's really like the difference. But yeah, I agree. Like I think, Emmanwori is going to be a stud, like a potential like top 5 safety for you, like as soon as next year,
right out the gate. I think potentially if he lands in a good spot.
So that's really valuable. Like I mean, I don't think you need to don't overdraft Malachi Starks. Like I've enjoyed this, like how the discourse is kind of shaken out lately with like everyone kind of having Emmanwori as safety 1, because I think you will be able to get Malachi Starks like in the 4th round now, which is like that's where you want to go. Right?
Yeah, Bobo, where would you consider Emmanwori in rookie drafts? Let's say he lands in a good spot and has a pretty clear path to being a starter year 1.
Most of the time with these safeties, I want to think like back of the 3rd. But honestly, for honestly for Emmanwori, I would say like probably early 3rd. I don't really want to get him in the 2nd because there's still going to be a lot of offensive talent, but
But if you're loaded up with picks, you have like 5, 6 picks.
Like y'all are saying, if you could draft, I do this a lot of times with like Abdul Carter. It's like if you could draft Will Anderson at the 108, you probably would, and I see those guys very similar. The same with Emmanwori. If you could draft Kyle Hamilton the back of the 2nd,
you do it. You'd absolutely do it. If this guy, we feel confident, can step in and be a top 5 dynasty safety, I think it's just one of those things, like Sig said earlier, don't overthink it. Do you want running back 13 in the draft, or do you want the safety 1? Maybe late 2nd, early 3rd is where I think I start looking for him. And you kind of just let the board come to you. Don't reach for these IDPs. Right. Scoop up the value. I think,
or reach for them.
It depends on how your draft is going, I think, right? Because this is one of those drafts where I think a lot of defensive talent is going to be pushed down the board in rookie drafts because people are going to be gaga over these running backs. I think there's going to be, because that's all we've heard, right? This is such a deep class, and there's probably going to be legit 12 to 15 guys at running back that I think go in the first the first 3 rounds.
Yeah,
I think people, not to say that they should, I just think the market is way infatuated with this running back class.
From an IDP perspective, though, you have the 3 highlights that we've talked about tonight. You've got, 4. You've got Travis Hunter at cornerback. You've got Abdul Carter, who is going to presumably be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft, top 4 potentially. Yep. You've got Jihad Campbell, who will be the number 1 linebacker off the board. And then to me, you have Emmanwori. I think Starks could be a little bit of a trap. I think based on where he's drafted in the actual NFL draft, he might get overdrafted in rookie drafts from a points per game perspective. I don't think he's gonna produce quite like Emmanwori. And honestly, at that point, I would kind of rather wait and just have Xavier Watts later on for free.
Yeah, maybe even off waivers after the rookie draft is over.
But what I was saying though is if you feel like moving up for one of those 4 elites at the position, I don't hate it, because not all these running backs are going to work out this year.
Yeah. Well, Sig, how are you approaching, kind of dovetailing into this conversation, how are you approaching your rookie drafts this year with offense and IDP sprinkled in? Is your approach different at all this year based on the class, or some general principles still apply?
No, I think that, so I'll give just an overarching view, which includes the IDPs, but I think the first round this year is going to be worth a lot less than the first round was last year, especially in Superflex. I think we saw you were getting guys like Brian Thomas and Ladd McConkey at the end of the first round, back half of the first round last year. There's that kind of impact. I mean, maybe one of the running backs, I don't know, but I just don't expect there to be that kind of impact. So depending on the scoring system, I'm willing to pull the trigger on Abdul Carter in the late first round. I'm willing to pull the trigger on Carson Schlesinger in the mid second, because it's a vast plateau of talent. And I think probably somewhere around the late second, early third, we'll see where Emmanwori goes off the board. But it's kind of how you laid it out. Here are the potential real difference makers, and I would really say just truly those 3 true difference makers on the IDP side, and why you're willing to take Abdul Carter in the late first, depending on your scoring system, or Carson Schlesinger. In a tackle heavy system, maybe it's Carson Schlesinger. What you love about Schlesinger is he just has a GPS for the ball. He's not an elite athlete. He's not the kind of off-ball linebacker, Patrick Willis, or someone that we saw going in the top 15 of the NFL draft, and easily going in the top 10 of mixed rookie drafts, even back when IDP wasn't cool. But Schlesinger is going to rack up those tackles, and that supply of those guys is much more shallow than it used to be. So you maybe pull a trigger on him in the second, you pull a trigger on Emmanwori in the third, because he can be a true difference maker. Again, what you're looking for is an IDP that has the playmaking ability and the base of being heavily involved around the ball a lot, that they're going to be an asset, and they're going to potentially win your week for you. Emmanwori can do that. And the reason you're willing to take these guys is because of the vast plateau at running back and at wide receiver. Everybody's rankings are going to be different going into the draft, and then based on draft capital and based on destination, we're going to shake it up even more. So if you're weighing Schlesinger in the late second against a running back, that running back might be there at your next pick in the third. If you're weighing Emmanwori against a running back in the third, the same running back that you might take might be there in the fourth. So I just think that these known quantities, you're not going to lose out. And even if it's the second or third running back on your board, the running backs are so deep. Look, guys, I'll break down the running back thing like this. I know it's an IDP show, but it's these topics are intertwined. You can't talk about one without the other. We are all going to love some 6th, 7th undrafted running back, 6th, 7th round undrafted running backs. Each of us are going to have 2 or 3 guys and be like, that guy should not have fallen. I'm going to make sure I get that guy. And they're going to be there in the 4th or 5th round. So you're going to get some of your pet running backs in this draft without having to take them in the early rounds. You're only going to get impact IDP players if you take them in the early rounds.
Yeah, that's very well said, I think. I was doing the math in my head. We have a 5-round rookie draft, 12 teams, 60 picks in the rookie draft. The distribution, we're saying this is sort of a top, heavy front-loaded class, top-end talent, but then it's kind of a mixed bag after that. It's funny to sit here and think, okay, if we have 35 offensive players go in our 5-round rookie mock draft. That leaves 25 IDPs. Can you all think of 25 IDPs that you would want to come away from your IDP draft with? I sure can't. Hell, even if you knock that number down to like 40 offense, 20 defense, it still feels like you're going to have several picks where you're like, I really wish I wasn't having to make this selection right now. Like, this guy's clearly the best player on the board.
Just burning a pick.
Right, just setting it on fire. So again, Sig, you said this, I think it was a couple years ago on this very show, and I love that, of like, this feels like a good year when you're on the clock to have some of those maybe LB targets, edge targets, veterans on maybe some pick needy teams in your league, and be ready to send out some trade offers if the board falls in such a way that you're like, I would rather have Levante David here for the 4-11 than I would taking the edge 6 from this class.
Yeah, and get a 4th next year thrown in, or a 5th next year thrown in, right? Like kick that draft capital down the road to next year and get someone who can help this year. Absolutely, that's the way to address IDP and pick value this year. So guys, I haven't fully settled on the Bloom 100, but I mean, we're not going to see, I think in the top 60 of the Bloom 100, I don't know that there's going to be more than like 6 or 7 IDPs. And if there's more like 10 or 12, most of those guys are going to be like the next 4 or 5 will be like 50 or later. Okay. Like in the top 50 of the Bloom 100, maybe there'll be like 5 or 6 IDPs. It's just that kind of year. Again, also because of the depth of talent at running back and wide receiver.
Right. Yeah. It's a very deep class. Maybe not as like top end talent, like loaded kind of front end talent that we've seen in like other wide receiver drafts, but you do have, I think, a depth of quality here.
That's
so
great for waivers. Folks.
That is. Yes, exactly. That is a great point, Addy. Well, let's wrap up here, Sig. Everyone loves talking sleepers, and the draft is going to be so interesting. So this season even does suggest that these are guys you're taking in the rookie draft, because as Adam just mentioned, there's going to be a lot of talent out there on waivers, I think, on both sides of the ball. But who is a guy that is flying a little bit under the radar on the defensive side of the ball? You can't quite figure out why they're not getting as much love as you think they deserve. Give me a sleeper you're pounding the table for in IDP fantasy leagues.
Yeah, well, I'll go with 2 because I can't help myself. But the first one I'd say is like Robin to Batman. If Carson Schlesinger is Batman, then Kai Medrano is Robin, right? These linebackers with great range, and Medrano is more of like a safety linebacker tweener, which could be a bad thing or could be a good thing. But we're not talking about him as a 1st round pick. We're talking about him as a 3rd day pick, and he's in Schlesinger's shadow, which from a draft prospect perspective, it might be a little bit overlooked. There's some potential for him to be a 3-down linebacker with development. And then I'll bring up Nick Martin because out of Oklahoma State, because he was unbelievably productive. And he's not the only one. There's a handful of linebackers in this class that are seek and destroy guys that you would hope get lined up in the old school 4-3 weak side freelancing, like see ball, get ball kind of role. But Nick Martin was incredibly productive in that role. And then he got hurt. Now he might not be a 3-down linebacker, but he's the kind of linebacker who can make the most in terms of production out of the opportunity that he does have. And he's under the radar because of that injury last year. So waivers, we keep saying waivers, these are the guys. And I think that more than ever this year, I'll put a punctuation mark on that point about waivers, is rookie mini camp, being the first one to respond to positive news and being willing to move on from the last few guys on your roster could be very important this year.
Yeah. Love that, Addy.
More on the waiver talk. I was looking back at some of the previous drafts we've done.
Yes.
In our RSO league. So some undrafted guys. So just some potential that you could maybe find in some similar type players. Mike Sanderstill, someone that Sig talked about very highly last season.
The Gremlin.
Tyrese Knight, Tyke Smith, Braden Fisk. You could have found those guys on waivers in most leagues last season. If you look back to 2023, Ivan Pace, Evan Witherspoon, Tuli Tuliopu. Definitely pronounced that perfect.
That's the new pronunciation, in case you were wondering.
It's tough. Yaya Diaby. We are from Kentucky, folks.
Yes, this is very difficult for us.
Byron Young, Nick Herbig, Kobe Turner, Keon White. So I think this could be one of those classes where you find a lot of those type of players out there for you for free.
Yeah, exactly. It's the cost of a mouse click, as Johnny the Greek likes to say. Yeah. So like Sig said, pay attention to rookie minicamp news, pay attention to training camp. Sig, you mentioned something that I'll bring up here that makes me optimistic for the future of some of these tweener types is that, yes, there is a tremendous bust potential, as we've seen with a lot of these guys. Weirdly, many of them drafted by the Arizona Cardinals, who just seem to love tweeners. But you mentioned a safety linebacker hybrid. I like that there is now a blueprint with Jamie and Sherwood that we can see. The NFL is very much like a copycat league. They want to see it done, and then they can replicate it in their own building. I like that we have this sort of blueprint now going from safety to linebacker that gives a path for these kind of tweener types to potentially go down. Bobo, I want a sleeper from you, maybe a guy that you're kind of eyeballing after the rookie draft's over, in the auction, guy you maybe sprinkle a little cash on.
Well, while we're saying names that we can't pronounce correctly, let's go with JT Tuimoloau.
There you go. I think that's actually flawless. Well done.
12.5 sacks, 22 tackles for loss in 2024. Played for Ohio State.
You've been on JT for a minute.
Probably overshadowed a little bit because of Jack Sawyer. Does win a little bit just because he's big and can overpower you. But I don't think JT will be drafted in a bunch of drafts and will be free on waivers. And if he goes to a decent team with not much depth, kind of like an Austin Booker last year, I kind of wanted a little bit more pop from Austin Booker because there was
not a lot there.
Nobody in
not
Chicago.
A lot there.
But with JT, I think not only is there a little bit of production, there's a little bit of talent and power. But if we put him on a team with a little bit of need, there could be a little bit of use in 2025.
Second round grade for Dane Brugler right after James Pierce in his edge rankings. So I think you could get some pretty nice draft capital. Mm-hmm. That's nice, Bobo. I like it. Addie, what you got for me? Any sleepers?
I'll go with Jahdae Barron. I think that he could be a nice little slot corner for you. Also, Jacob Parrish, another type of slot corner out of Kansas State. He's been comped to Teron Johnson, so that made my ears perk up quite a bit. But yeah, just looking for those cornerbacks that aren't afraid to get in there and get dirty and rack up tackles. There's a lot of value to be had in those type of players.
Got to roll them sleeves up and get in mud. Get in there like a pig in mud, Eddie.
You got to be a little crazy to play the position anyway. So it's like the ones that are even more crazy,
Yeah.
You want to target those types.
I want the mentality. I think it was an offensive tackle or a guard that say, I want to take people's love of football away from them. Like, this is legalized assault. I want to make them hate playing this game. Like, that's the kind of mentality I want out of my defenders. So, well, Sig, thank you as always for coming on, my friend. This was a fantastic episode, a great kind of top-down overview of the draft, our rookie drafts, some player takes sprinkled in there as well. We're recording this here on Wednesday, April 16th. Tomorrow, the pre-draft Bloom 100 goes live, footballguys.com. Make sure you're subscribed over there, folks. Check out Sig's work. So, Sig, we know that that's going to be a great read here as we wrap up this week before the draft. So we got the draft, Green Bay, next Thursday. You guys are, I'm sure, going to be doing some coverage of that. What's the thing you're looking forward to the most, Sig, here? We'll get you out of here on this. Sure. Just a draft thought in general. What's got you most excited? What are you most looking forward to?
Well, personally, it's just getting to hang out with Bob Harris and Matt Waldman and all the people we have coming through. Joe Bryant's going to throw out the first pitch. Paul Perticchese from Saturday to Sunday, who's just absolute sweetheart, and his analysis is so thorough and so deep. We're going to have Alfredo and Dave Kluge and Jeff Bell from Football Guys Dynasty Show, and then close out with Matt Batanti, who loves offensive line play and is always just a good time to hang out with. And it's just a reunion with all of our people, right? Just like the reunion that we have every year around this time of year, guys, where we get to spend time with people that we love, warming ourselves around the fire of this game that we love. And of course, that energy comes from the intense exertion and commitment that all of these players have. So we celebrate them first and foremost. I look forward to, I can't keep my answer to just one. Come on, you guys know me better than that. I really love as I get a little verklempt when I think about it, the release of emotion. That we have to remember that for these players, even some of the players drafted in the 6th or 7th round, even the guys who get the call after the draft saying, "Hey, we want to give you an undrafted contract. We want you to come and be part of our team." It's a culmination of a lifetime, really, and of dozens of other people too, who've just been pulling resources from all over their lives to make this possible for these players. Cam Ward, who's going to go number 1. Thor Nystrom was on my show today and was talking about how Cam Ward was a nobody. He had to go to a tryout at Incarnate Word, and he wasn't even going to get a chance to throw. And they saw him throwing on the sidelines and said, look at that kid, by the way, that we're not even looking at. And look at the way he throws 50-yard spirals on the sidelines. Or we would never even heard of Cam Ward. And here he is going number 1. Belief in self, belief, like dreaming, like really dreaming the biggest dream. Some of those big dreams do come true. And that release of emotion, like, guys, I'm a sucker for the phone call videos, when they call the players and you mess up Braden Fisk, whenever they made the call for, it was my all-time favorites last year when they had already drafted Jared Verse and they were calling, and Jared Verse was like rushing to get to Rams headquarters so he could be the one that made the call to Braden Fisk. And he had just like walked in the building whenever they called up Braden Fisk to say, we're going to take you. And he already knew that Verse, he called him Verse, was going to the Rams. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to play with Verse. And they handed the phone to Jared Verse. And guys, if you haven't watched the video, I know you all, so I know you probably have. Anybody who's listening to the show or watching it right now, there was just this moment when they both basically almost like especially Braden Fisk, just started sobbing, just was so overcome by the emotion of the moment. And it was the catalyst was the two of them who obviously loved each other so much and loved playing next to each other and with each other so much, knowing that they were going to continue that journey together, but also just there's so much intensity, there's so much pressure, the pressure on these guys, and just you could feel it all release in that moment, a truly cathartic moment. And it's just beautiful. So I try to watch every single one of those draft phone call videos that I can and experience with tears running down my face, just experience that release of emotion that I think we all keep so much pent up emotion as we go through our daily lives at the speed of life with all the demands that we have and all the things going on in our life, and just taking that moment out to just breathe it in. Like, this is all really happening, and experiencing that through the draft. It's the thing that I love the most about the draft.
Did you expect any other kind of answer?
Just like the absolute best. We talked about one of one with Travis Hunter, Sigmund Bloom, one of one. One of one.
Where else are you getting that kind of answer to that question, folks? And that's what makes him the GOAT. Sig, thank you again for coming on, my friend. We look forward to this every year. So excited to check out the Bloom 100, footballguys.com. Look forward to seeing your takes post-draft, Sig, and look forward to doing this again very soon. But thank you all for listening. Thank you for watching. Be sure to check out the IDPshow.com. We will be doing a round 1 reaction show next Thursday night. And then on the after show, Jace Abbey will be talking with John Macri, best and worst defensive landing spots. We've got y'all covered, so much good stuff. The IDP draft kit is right around the corner for us, dropping May 1st. So you want to check out the IDPshow.com. Check out Football Guys. Enjoy the draft, and we'll see y'all on the other side.
It's the IDP